Um, the next session will be um, on the topic of living and aging with pre-existing disabilities. Um, the speaker is none other than Prof. Dr. Amara Malar Selvi Naikar from Hospital Chancellor Tuanku Muhriz, UKM. Um, she's a consultant rehabilitation medicine physician from Faculty of Medicine, University Kebangsaan Malaysia. She has been working in PPUKM since 2003 within the Department of Orthopedics and Traumatology. She has actively been involved in clinical work in several areas of rehabilitation like spinal cord injury, brain injury, pediatric rehabilitation, and had a clinical attachment Royal North Shore Hospital in Sydney in 2007, and has since worked in coordinate and involve her team in several multidisciplinary clinics such as Joint Cerebral Palsy Clinic and Spinal Bifida Clinic, as well as individualized care for other related pediatric disorders such as limb deficiency, spinal cord injury, brain injury, cancer pain, to provide comprehensive care to children with multiple functional impairments through procedures such as botulinum toxin injections, therapy, orthotics and prosthetic management, and most recently, baclofen pump refill and programming services. She is also a passionate teacher and enjoys teaching both basic sciences and clinical medicine. Her research includes work done on various areas of rehabilitation as well as tissue engineering. Her publications span over peer-reviewed journals, chapters in books as well as public health articles, booklets. As a rehabilitation involves community extension of medical care, she continued her work in society with several community groups and in the co-founder of the Vice President of Spina Bifida Association of Malaysia, an organization for children with developmental spinal problem. Her interests are not just limited to people with disability, but also to animals in similar situation too. She helps out at a local elephant conservatory to aid in prosthetic restoration for elephants who have undergone amputation due to being trapped in poachers' snares. Since 2015, she has actively participated in Mercy Malaysia work with post-disaster medical rehabilitation and capacity building in Nepal, and has helped to bring together a team of rehab professionals interested in disaster rehabilitation to participate in Mercy Malaysia's activity. Most recently, she has been actively involved in WHO initiative for rehabilitation capacity building in lower income countries, which is a project in collaboration with International Society of Physical Rehabilitation and Medicine. Her topic today will be living and aging with pre-existing disabilities. Let us welcome Prof. Amara Malar Selvi Naikar for her speech.
Good morning, a warm welcome, and hope you're enjoying the conference. So today I will share a little bit on living and aging with pre-existing disabilities. So aging is a process and not an event. And so while most of us think aging as an end result, aging actually starts earlier due to the genetic and epigenetic factors that affect and alter our biological processes, leading to problems such as DNA damage, dysfunctional protein regulation, gene expression errors, mitochondrial dysfunction, reduced energy production, and even metabolic imbalances. All these are happening at molecular and cellular level, even as we hit our 20s and 30s. So when these processes are disrupted, they expand into organ level damage, and that's when we start to experience clinical symptoms and ill health. And depending on the organ involved, we can show certain symptoms like the brain. You could have Alzheimer's or dementia. Musculoskeletal system can lead to osteopenia, muscle weakness, joint problems. The gut can be involved, the heart can be involved. In essence, the aging process starts at molecular level and manifests as clinical symptoms very much later. So this is actually happening to everyone. But the rate of aging and severity of symptoms differ from person to person and depends on various other factors such as social, behavioral, and environmental factors. So what is it like to be aging with a pre-existing disability? Well, it will always depend on the type of disability. We do know physical disability contributes most towards early health decline. And this is often because persons born with disabilities face more than just health issues. A non-supportive environment can compound problems. So they can have issues with negative attitudes towards disabilities, limited healthcare access, limited funding for healthcare. In fact, most disabled persons with congenital disabilities don't even have health insurance. They are affected by the disability and its treatment, numerous hospital visits, surgeries. They also lack knowledge on aging. And unfortunately, while all this is going on, the regular process of aging is also going on because they also have lifestyle situations like poor food choices, alcohol, smoking, lack of exercise, and all of this cumulatively affects their quality of life. In terms of their medical issues, they have the same exposure as persons without disabilities. So they too have risks of cardiovascular disease, diabetes, hypertension, obesity, GI problems, and depending on the actual disability, cause for disability, if they're catheter users, they can have frequent UTIs, stones, and risk for bladder cancers. Sitting on a wheelchair long, they can get lymphedema, pain, pressure sores, osteoporosis, and of course, social isolation can cause depression. All these medical problems often translate into functional deficits like increased fatigue, decreased endurance, weakness, and increased need for assistance. And if all this is not enough, socially, they suffer some setbacks too. So studies show they're less likely to marry, less likely to have children, which means they won't have that support as they age. And they're often financially challenged and with existent psychological issues like loneliness, causing anxiety and depression. And what is significant is that their support system is changing. So when they're young and disabled, they have their parents to take care of all their needs. So they don't really suffer the disability in a big way. Whereas as they grow older and their parents are less present in their decision making, they often feel very left out and alone. And to make matters worse, studies do show that there is a steady loss of function with age. So a person with disability ends up not being able to do much of his even personal care activities as he becomes older. Whereas someone who has had a fairly healthy lifestyle and no disability can continue to do his ADL well into his 80s. So you may wonder, why would a person with disability who's always just sitting in a wheelchair, not doing much, have an early decline in health? Well, we have to understand that they are starting off with lower reserves, and although they seem to be just sitting on a wheelchair, they actually do a lot of high demand activities day in and day out. They propel their wheelchairs, and for those who walk with walking frames, they actually have very high energy consumption walking in that odd way and struggling with their frames. They have to transfer many times a day, bed to wheelchair to toilet, back again to wheelchair, to the car, back again to the wheelchair, back again to the bed later that night. So in a day, they put a lot of pressure to their shoulders and back and arms. And many of them also take part in sporting activities as a means to keep fit. But unfortunately, most of these activities are overhead activities, and they too can end up hurting their shoulders and upper limb. So this is what we call secondary overuse symptoms or repetitive strain injuries. So often someone using a wheelchair would have 50% of his weight passing through his arm every time he transfers. And he's transferring at least 3-4 times a day. That's 100 times a month and 1,200 times a year and more than 60,000 times in 50 years. So you can imagine the damage it's doing to his joints. Often they suffer rotator cuff injuries, subacromial bursitis, capsulitis, chronic pain, nerve entrapment like impingement syndrome, carpal tunnel syndrome, and sometimes they have a lot of tendinitis, golfer's elbow, tennis elbow. So it's not surprising that living with a physical disability takes its toll on a person's well-being. So this is a little story of a person who had spinal bifida. So which means he was born with this disability, and he grew up with a lot of challenges because this was early years when surgery was done for so many parts, to his spine, to his back, to his legs. So much so he said after each surgery, he just felt weaker and weaker. And of course, education was a challenge because no schools would accept him, but he managed to be self-taught. His biggest break came when he, managed to go on an exchange program to USA. And that's where he realized how advanced other countries were in terms of disability access and travel. And this is something that he was very passionate about. And he really did want to make a change, fight for disability rights when he came back. And he did. For many years now, he's been writing and trying to create awareness and, frequently interacts with policymakers. But unfortunately, changes are slow to come, and opportunities and access still remain a challenge for persons with disability in Malaysia. So, but the good thing he did was he decided to train dogs as personal assistants. And so he has 2 dogs that he has trained, and he realized how fortunate he was to have done it, because now as he's aging, he finds that he can't do the little things like picking up his, toothbrush, or even retrieving his wallet. So all these little things are done by his doggo friends for him. And they even stand by as he transfers so that he doesn't fall. They'll sniff out a pressure ulcer, so they even act as early warning systems. Amazing. But so he does have some support there, but that's not enough. And luckily for him, he does have a friend who checks in on him from time to time. But the story doesn't end here. He is getting older, and he realizes that he's becoming more dependent, and his friend is also aging. So with decline in health and income, he dreads what the future has in store for him. And with the current state of disability services, where there are major gaps, so he definitely is very worried about what is going to happen. Unfortunately, this is the reality, not just for him, but for many persons with disabilities. So it's timely that some distinct steps are taken to address this growing need. So what can be done for persons aging with pre-existing disabilities? Well, for one, we need to refocus. It's not just disability prevention, but now we need to prevent morbidities and try to encourage retention of function for as long as possible. And we have to plan for coordinated services to accommodate for their premature decline in health. And to do that, we need to integrate a lot of services. The healthcare needs to be able to help attend to their early needs, as well as plan and prepare them for early aging. They need to be taught to prolong their function and prevent morbidities. The family needs to be more involved and to know about resources that are available. Policymakers need to be more proactive towards disability care and have supportive policies for education, jobs, and finances. And finally, We need to engage community organizations and NGOs to pitch in to support and make available more services, as this population is aging earlier than the general population. So the NGOs can help in many ways by having community-based rehabilitation, visiting helpers to assist with activities of daily living, and perhaps even volunteers to take them to hospital and shopping, etc. These agencies also need to help them plan for a future with declining health. So, in terms of placement and alternative care. And definitely there is a big concern with end-of-life care, and persons with disability tend to worry about this. And so this is something that needs more attention. This is a nursing home, as you can see, and the average age of the occupants is about 70 years. So we do have many such nursing homes in Malaysia. But can you imagine how a person who's not that old, but who has physical needs to be placed in this environment? I think it would be very depressing because, persons with disability, especially when they're still not that old, they still are active, their mind is active, there's a lot that they want to do. Unfortunately, we don't have this system here yet in a big way, independent living units. So these units are units that are designed to be accessible and have facilities for disabled-friendly activities. So the person can continue to live independently with services provided for him, such as, caregiver services, or, volunteers to take them shopping or to hospitals. So with all the services in place, they can continue to live independently, enjoy social interaction, yet receive the assistance that they need. So this not only will add quality to their life, but also help them maintain their freedom, dignity, and personal space. However, such independent living units are just about beginning to merge, and obviously it's initiatives by the private sector, and they are still very expensive. The good thing is we do have a lot of NGOs looking after various causes, but what is missing is the central system that can coordinate it. So for the disability system, aging is a success. Man, you have made it, with all your disability, you have lived past 50. That's great. But for the aging network, disability is a failure. They have failed to age healthily, successfully. So this philosophical difference between aging and disability networks proves to be a barrier to effective partnership. So somehow we need to find a way to bridge this. So I work with the Spinal Bifida Association, which is an association that takes care of children with spinal problems. And what started off initially exclusively for children, we then had to pivot to accommodate adults with the same condition, because it became increasingly clear that we had to manage a whole spectrum if we wanted to give optimal service. About 30% of our association members are older than 25 years, which means in 10 to 15 years, they will be needing more services as their parents get older and siblings move on. They are going to be disabled, but this time with no safety net. So understanding these changing dynamics and what starts as a childhood problem, which eventually transitions into adult-related problems, would need services that can help them end to end, instead of just leaving them with no option after a certain period. So all this calls for a collaboration between children's organization, disability networks, as well as geriatric society, to come together to share knowledge, resources, and transition of service that will benefit and better prepare youngsters with disabilities to face a future full of challenges, but this time with the necessary support. Thus, aging with pre-existing disability has its challenges, but with the right support system, morbidities can be prevented. So healthy aging is not just a concept for the able-bodied, but can and should be inclusive of persons with pre-existing disabilities, so that they too can enjoy a better quality of life. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof, for the wonderful presentation, quite extensive on aging with pre-existing disability. Um, just before I open the question to the floor, I just want to know how do you go about getting those disabled who are aging in the rural areas like Sabah, Sarawak, and so on. So, how do you go about it from your society perspective?
Okay. Actually, we really have not reached into the far interior, and this is something that we are working on. And from the society perspective, we have just started a 2-year program. In fact, we got a global grant for it to run programs to educate healthcare professionals and parents with children with spina bifida in this case. And so we'll be reaching out to several states, including Sabah, Sarawak. So I probably can give you a better perspective of what's happening in 2 years' time. But right now it's obvious, we still have a long way to go as far as disability in rural areas.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, Prof. I know when I started my, as I'm an OT, occupational therapist, spinal bifida is one of the area that I was having difficulty to go about how to rehabilitate them as well. Okay. Is there any questions from the floor? Would like to ask Prof? Yeah, Prof.
Thank you, Prof. Amara, for that wonderful presentation. Just wanted to ask the concept of pets in caring for disabled. Is that something that's formalized and available in Malaysia? And how much research has there been in the use of pets for care of disabled? Thank you.
Did you get a question, Prof?
Sorry, I'll just repeat my question. I was wondering about the use of pets for care of disabled. I think you showed some photos of dogs being used for disabled people. How formalized is that in Malaysia? And is there any research to show that pets can be beneficial for care of disabled? Thank you.
Yeah, so this is one of our own patients who undertook to do this. So I can't say it's formalized, and I'm not too involved in it, but this is something he does, and he definitely is great, very happy with what he has done, because now the dogs are able to help him. But we've seen this in the Western world, guide dogs and assistive dogs or even other animals. So in terms of research, I'm not too sure, because I think it's an evolving area of interest in Malaysia. So so I can't really comment on that, but I think we need to do more work to see how this can be helpful and where it can replace the human contact. Because end of the day, as you age with a disability, you need more and more contact. You need people to help you with a lot of things. So sometimes that's not going to be very possible. And if these pets can, pick up all the small things that drop, which you can't bend down to pick up, or who can just follow you around, or even give you that emotional bonding, I think that itself would be a great help.
Yeah, thank you, Prof. Amar Malar. Is there any question from the floor? What about carers, Prof? What do you think that carers who are aging as well with those person with disability who are also aging. So how do you complement or anticipate those problems that they're going to face?
That's very right, and we are seeing that in our aging population of persons with disability. So you see, like the kids in spina bifida, as they grow older, the parents are less able to manage them, and they have to take on certain roles, and they may not be fully equipped, especially if they've had disrupted education, and because of that, they can't have a job. So they are less able to face the world, confidently and with the right support. So that's why my suggestion is that we need to look at a more comprehensive program for persons with disability. After all, even the old are going to, may end up with some disability. If the end result is going to be disability, then a lot of systems in our country needs to be looked at. The healthcare system, policy-wise, education system, everything needs to already plan for to accommodate persons with disabilities rather. So and caregiver, even now a lot of people depend on helpers, foreign workers who help at home, and it's not a bad thing. It's good if you can get them and they can be trained. In the hospital, we do that. So when someone comes in with a brain injury and the family is not able to take care of them, what we do try is ask them to get a caregiver, a foreign helper, and then we try and train the helper for basic needs. But of course, for more specialized needs, they will get in, a part-time nurse and things like that. So, so that's another transition program we could look at, where caregivers, either local or foreigners, who can step in as the parents are growing older, to try and help these disabled persons through for a longer period.
Yeah, Prof. Thanks a lot for the question. There's another two more questions that online they have asked. One is group homes for younger disabled person. Is it available, and where are they located? That's the first question.
Actually, there are independent living units around Klang Valley. I'm not so sure about other states, but because we are constantly interacting within the Klang Valley for now. So there are some independent living homes run by persons with disabilities. So what is done there is they will have one or two more able-bodied caregivers, and then they take in the disabled persons and try and train them in activities of daily living, and then depending on their abilities, maybe some IT work, get them some jobs which they can do from home. So but unfortunately, these sort of independent living units are very few, and they themselves are in need of financial support. So I can't say it's running optimally, but they are trying. What we do need is more political will for this, to make this a more nationalized program so that it's available. I know the Kebajikan does try and help out here and there, but unless we have some top-down programs, it may be hard to implement. And actually, kudos to all these organizations who are really trying their best to do what they can. And it's not easy because you're constantly begging for funds, and and you yourself are disabled. So I think it's quite a challenge. But what I hope after this is that we have more people coming forward to help out, because there's a lot that needs to be done, and it's not just rehabilitation professionals alone who can do it. So we do need a wide range of professionals from all disciplines, not just in any ways possible.
Yeah, Prof, I think that as you were saying that we have so many organizations running all kind of services, but as you are saying that it may be not coordinated, or is there kind of coordination from the whole organization itself? There is not like everybody is doing their own part and so on, so that maybe there is a need for coordinated kind of organization that can coordinate, and everybody will be doing their part and not duplicating and so on, so that way we can also extend our services to not only in the Klang Valley but also in the other rural areas, so that everybody will get the opportunity, the services, the accessibility that they need. There's one more question is about, do you have good ending for the disabled? I mean, end of life.
I'm not sure. Ending as in someone
Maybe-
who's disabled and passed on, or
Yeah.
someone who's living a good life?
I think it's like end of life or something like that, maybe.
Okay, so end of life. Yes, I mean these are personal experiences, but it's not reflective of how everything goes for the general population. So I have a quadriplegic patient who was quite young, in his early 40s, who was going to get married, but of course the whole thing was called off after his injury many years ago, and but his fiance at that time continued to be very supportive of him, and so he did have a good quality of life, and he could afford a maid, helper, and so things were good for him until, of course, he passed away recently after COVID. That was really unfortunate. So in his case, he really did have all the support, and if he was still around, and I'm sure he would have continued to get that support. But for how long is the question? So that's why we again have to fall back on a system that is able to take care, and not on individuals that will have to bear the whole brunt of it. Because as individuals, we will also grow old and pass on. But if there's a system to step in, then of course they're assured of much better quality of life. As in, say, someone who is still alive and doing well as a disabled person, we have many of that. And I think those of us in the rehabilitation field have been very fortunate to see them through many years. And I think it's this the cohesiveness of having good healthcare, having that healthcare extension into the community, and having the disabled community to also understand their responsibility towards their own health. So this knowledge and resources that's shared and spread around has helped. So yes, we do have some very good successful disabled persons.
Okay, is there any question from the floor? If not, we can end the session. Of course, Prof have given us a wide knowledge and also experience on how we can help those disabled who are aging. Okay, let us thank Prof the usual manner. Thank you, Prof.
Thank you.